Hi, good morning. So we are having this recording for today's lesson. It's going to be attached to the thing. You probably already found it. Let's go ahead and go over. I just want to take a minute to go over this WAG material page that we all see when you log in. There are announcements. There's a Good morning. So before we get started, just want to go over this one more time. I have a few new students and a couple of old students who are still asking this question. So just want to make sure that you are understanding what this little important page is for. Up here in the blue, it's going to tell you the Zoom link, and it's going to tell you that on regular days, we have Zoom from 10:30 to 11. On block days, there is no Zoom on Wednesday, but on Thursday, we have it from 12:05 until 12:40. You guys are tied to my fourth period class, so we kind of follow the schedule, what we have on campus, because that's when I'm available. When you click on it, it's going to take you straight into Zoom for you to log in and do that. So it's there all the time. So if you ever have a question at like 3 in the morning, you're like, oh, what time is Mrs. Jones' Zoom? The information's right there. Underneath that, we have some announcements. I am absent today, Monday, November 2nd. We adopted an animal last night, so I'm just staying home to make sure everything's okay with it. If you are still missing the human environment interaction task that we took on October 23rd, it's been more than a week at this point, and you need to talk to me, whether that is through email, Zoom, or face-to-face. You need to tell me what's going on. Why did you miss that test? I don't need the whole lifelong story. I just need for you to understand that, my expectation, the school's expectation, is that if a test is assigned for that day, you need to complete it that day. If you don't, then that's almost like you coming into school and sitting there at your desk and not doing it, or you being absent. So whichever way you kind of want to go, especially for those virtual kids, you kind of have to talk to me and tell me, hey, what was going on? I don't know if you're absent until you actually are. So just make sure that, we're having that little conversation, email, Zoom, or face-to-face. Schoology was synced to Hack last night at 10:21. So if you have a blank, it's because there was a blank in, like, you didn't submit the assignment. On some of these assignments, it was because you passed the deadline and we're no longer able to turn it in. That is in effect because our district policy says that every day that an assignment is late, then we are going to deduct 20 points. So 20, 20, 20, 20 equals a 0 on day 5. So even if you turn it in completed 100% and you should get 100 because you waited so long, it's now 0, okay? So on that 5th day, the submissions are going to be disabled. You cannot email it to me because it's still late, so you're still getting a 0. And I am only accepting work through Schoology. If you are having a hard time submitting something, then you need to be logging into Zoom. My expectations is that you complete the assignment on the day that it's assigned, and then you submit it on the day that it's assigned, okay, on the due date. So if you get notes and you have problems submitting it, then you should be logging into Zoom the very next day saying, hey, Ms. Jones, it didn't work, okay? I know, especially with virtual kids, that, the whole point to virtual is that you have all of this like leeway of what's going on. However, email isn't helpful. It's not effective. Most of the time, I need you on Zoom so that I can see what your computer is doing, and then I could either help you with that, or I could take a screenshot and send it to our IT guy and say, hey, this is what's going on. Please help us. We don't know what to do, okay? So having that us touch base is going to be super important. Please make it happen if you're having that problem. When you are over here, these are the WAGs. I already opened it, so we're going to look at this one. Let's go ahead and talk about the week. Monday, we are looking at the United States government, okay? Kind of basic ideas of what's going on, because tomorrow you guys have a student holiday, because it is election day. So this whole week we're going to be focusing on elections and, kind of seeing like how it all works together. We are not going to be talking about political parties. We are not going to be talking about what one stands for versus the other versus, the other political parties that don't get enough limelight probably. So this is not about that. This is just purely academic, okay? This is how our government works, and that's that. If you have any questions about any of the election stuff and the candidates, talk to your parents, okay? Or talk to an older sibling. They're the best people to kind of guide you through that, hopefully. I'm just now noticing that we don't have a Wednesday and Thursday separated because we don't have block days, so that needs to change. On Wednesday, we're going to be looking at electoral college, and we're going to have a couple of readings, and then we are going to extend that knowledge on Thursday, have a little review day, and then we are taking a test on Friday. Your 2 assignments for this week are going to be the review, which is going to be informative, and the test, which is actually going to be like a little project-based, okay? So I know some kids were thinking that they liked the old test when you're able to kind of argue your way and still get points. So that's the kind of test that we're going to have. All right, let's go ahead and focus on the assignment for today. All right, the United States. Where can my little face hide? Okay, so there are 3 layers of government, okay? Think of it as like a layered cake, okay? All of these different layers of government are going to be in charge of different things. So the federal government, which is the big government, which is like the country government, that's what federal means. That's why we have FBI, Federal Bureau Investigation. They're like cops for the whole country, okay? They could go anywhere where the case leads them. They could go anywhere. If I were if I committed a crime, let's say I, stole a bike from someone. If I stole a bike in Houston, but I took the bike with me to Dallas, then the Houston police, they can't come into the Dallas area and arrest me. The Houston police would need to call the Dallas police and say, hey, this person, I have evidence that this person stole the bike. Can you help us get this person? And then they would work together to, capture the bad guy. So states are going to be very local. They only have power in their own jurisdiction. But the federal, it's, over the whole country. So they are going to be in charge of foreign policy. And that means that treaties with the United States and other countries, that also means like if all of these countries make a deal that they're going to, reduce gaslight emissions and fossil fuel emissions, then the federal government's the one who's going to commit to that. Texas can't be like, yeah, we're going to be a part of this group way over here. Like we're not able to do that. So they are going to be in charge of foreign policy and commerce, which is money, and defense. Okay. So if Mexico invades Texas, it's not going to be our police force who's going to protect us. It's going to be the National Army, the military is going to be the one who has to step in because it's their responsibility. The state is going to promote public health, safety, and welfare. So that's going to talk about education is going to be a really big one. They're going to talk about like if you are on welfare, if you're on food stamps, the state is the one who has to provide the money and has to provide the rules and has to provide the, whatever applications and requirements that you have to fulfill in order to do it. Local, in charge of local public servants. So firefighters and police. In this last election that we had last year, Mayor Turner, the mayor for Houston, had like this whole thing about firefighters. I think he was the one who talked about how like he wanted to reduce how much money they were spending on firefighters and like cut their hours and stuff. And it was like a big deal because some people are like, no, the firefighters need all the money that they can get. And then other people were like, excuse me. And then it's allergies. Okay. It's allergies. And then Turner was like, well, we're spending too much money. We got to cut budget somewhere. And this is the best place. So, and then they voted him for mayor. And, so I actually haven't followed up to see what happened about that. So the local, they all have like their spheres. They all have their kind of department that they are going to be in charge of. Okay. In most cases, the federal, when they come into like if there's a murder investigation, in most cases, they have to be invited in. But if it's related to another case that they're already working on, then they can just kind of like make their way. No. Okay. So anyways, so what you are going to do here is you are going to decide who gets what. So if you are looking at education, you should probably look at this and you are going to decide, okay, is education foreign policy, is education health, safety, and welfare, or is education public servants? It's actually the state. The state's in charge of that. Okay. If Mexico invades, taxes, who's going to fund taxes? If firefighters go on strike, who has to deal with that issue? Funding for the police. There's a state, I can't remember, it was in the news, that decided that they're just not going to have policemen anymore. And they've kind of have like a whole issue and now they're cut off and it's kind of different. Who's going to decide, let's get rid of the penny? I hear that the federal government has been trying to get rid of the penny forever. And then who's in charge of roads and highways? So this is where things get interesting, okay? Because depending on what your answers are here is going to, just because one area is in charge of another doesn't necessarily mean that the federal government doesn't try to influence certain decisions, okay? Speaking of all of that, which level of government affects your life the most on a daily basis? Those are just random stuff for you to think about. Which one of these actually affects your life? Is it treaties? Our treaty with Mexico, we are so close to Mexico. Is it robbery? Is it running a red light? Is it education? Probably. Or is it the military? Which one of these affects your daily life? So you're going to give an answer. Make sure you explain. If you give me a cheap answer, then, I don't know if you really know what you need to know. So I am going on a tangent. Some things that are interesting is when we are looking at roads and highways, the state is in charge of paying for the roads and highways, okay? We're going to call that infrastructure. Infrastructure should be paid for by the state. Sometimes I want to say it was Mississippi. Mississippi said that they're going to be in charge of paying for it. The federal government said, okay, the federal government, who is not in charge of this, said that they needed to raise the drinking age up to 21. Mississippi, being Mississippi, fought back and they said, no, the drinking age could be at 18. And what you going to say about that, federal government? Well, federal government comes back and says, hey, Mississippi, I am not going to donate money for your roads unless you change the drinking age up to 21, because research says that if you are drinking at 18, there is more causes for crashes, and now that's going to cost more money for us to maintain that. So Mississippi, if you want for the federal government to send you any money to help you with that, then you need to raise that drinking age all the way back up to 21. Mississippi is like, oh man, shoot, we kind of want that money. So they raised the drinking age back to 21. And money is going to be a really good way of how the federal government is going to influence things that they probably shouldn't have a say in. One of the really big ones is going to be education. Education is should be the state's. We take STAR, which is a Texas test. And as you are taking that test, or as, sorry, I heard noises. So education is the responsibility of the state. But every now and then the federal government says, hey, if you make this score on this test, then we're going to donate some money towards education. And Texas, being, a very smart state, is going to say, yes, we can have our students take this test and then we get more money. That sounds awesome. Absolutely. We could totally do that. And so that's kind of how all of those standardized testing, that's one of the reasons why we may never get rid of them, is because if the federal government has that measurement, then they're able to give us more money. And it is about the money. Because the money pays for Wi-Fi and other stuff that we need to be able to teach you. So it's kind of important. Not the most important. Your education is the most important. But it does kind of helped us get all of these Chromebooks that we have at our school and things like that. Anyways, tangent over. Here are the three branches. Which one do you think is the strongest? On the left, we start with legislative. This is Congress. We have the Senate and the House of Representatives. Remember, they are the law. On the executive, they are the president, the vice president, and then he has a group of people that help him. And then we have the judicial, which is going to be all of the judges. And the most important group of judges is going to be the Supreme Court. Whenever there is like a really big court case and they have to decide, okay, was a law broken or was a law not broken? It's usually going to go into the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court makes the decision. One of the biggest ones is going to be Roe v. Wade, okay? And the Supreme Court decides, you know what, that is the issues within that court case are going to be, justified. They're going to make their decision. And then they sided with, yes, abortion was legal. Another one is going to be the Texas versus Miranda. I think it's Texas versus Miranda. And in that court case, they said that the defendant, Miranda is his last name, who I think he raped and murdered someone. When he was arrested, he was not told his rights, and that was wrong. And so Miranda actually got off because they took it up to the court case, and the judges were like, okay, if he wasn't read his rights, then the information that the police got from him was illegally obtained, cannot be used in a court of law. Therefore, all of that evidence was pulled away, and then he got off the hook. But like a few months later, he did something bad again and got arrested again. So they're all super important. So let's go ahead and break this down just a little bit more. I'm going to take it out of presentation mode because one thing that people say is that the president is the most powerful, that the executive branch is the most powerful. And we just kind of have to put this in perspective, okay? In legislation, you have 100 senators, and then you have 435 House of Representatives. So when we're talking about legislation, we are actually talking about 535 people. So all of the power of the legislator is broken into 535 people. Okay, that's a lot of people to share that power with. When we're talking about the executive, well, how many presidents do we have? We only have one. So that's a lot of power for one person to have. When we're looking at the judicial, we're looking specifically at the Supreme Court because they hold so much power, and they have 9 people on their Supreme Court. So while all of the branches are equally powerful, when we're breaking it down by what person holds the most power, well, the president owns the entire executive branch. So that president is very powerful, but the president is no more powerful than Congress or judicial. They all have to work together in order to do stuff. I want you guys to change those numbers. So make sure you do that. And let's go on to the next one. The executive branch, he is chief of state, chief executive, and he is the chief diplomat and all this other stuff. I really don't know what chief citizen is, but he is going to be in charge of how we kind of work with other countries. He is going to be very important in setting up our foreign policy. His State of the Union in August. August, it's in January 21st. He is going to kind of lay down like, okay, this is the vision I have for the America in regards to the US and other countries. And then sometimes they'll have a say in what's going on domestically, and kind of convince his political party to kind of vote for what he thinks is important. The dog's going crazy. Legislative branch. We have the will of Congress. They are going to declare war. The president is able to send troops somewhere for 90 days, 60 days. And then Congress decides, okay, they can stay there longer, or no, president, you better bring them back home. They're going to grant statehood. They're going to be in charge of taxes. So they are in charge of getting all of the money back. And then let's talk about, let's break that down just a little bit more. In Congress, you have two houses, okay? You have the House of Representatives. So this is going to reflect how many people are in that state. So Texas is a really big state, and we have a lot of people. So we actually have 36 districts of representatives. This number would be super important if I were to look up Rhode Island, which is a really small state and cannot possibly have enough, like the same amount of people. Someone needs to look that up. How many representatives does Rhode Island have? Okay, this is where like all of the states are going to kind of hold different power. The bigger you are, or let me say, the more populated you are, then the more power you have in the House of Representatives. They serve for 2 years. The purpose to this is that they are going to constantly have to be referring back to what the constituents are us, but your parents, like the people who vote. So like our two representatives for this area, depending on which area you are, is Dan Crenshaw and Dan Herberty. They are going to every 2 years, they have to run for re-election. So that means that they have to listen very good to what me and all of the voters want them to do. Because if they mess up, if they're not voting the way I want to, you know what? You got one more year, and then I'm going to go vote for someone else. So the people have a lot of power in order to be able to do that. They are constantly having to, if, all of a sudden from 1 year to the next, that the constituents changes the way they want to vote on certain policies, then the representatives have to constantly be in touch with them. They have to constantly be paying attention to what the constituents want. Okay. Why would it be important to have a representative voted in every 2 years? Why is it so important that they are only in there, for a year, and then they have to start worrying about, are they making us happy again? What's the purpose to that? The next one are the Senate. Let's make this big. Why isn't this big again? The Senate is going to be 2 senators for every state. So now if we only get 2 senators and Rhode Island only gets 2 senators, now Rhode Island and Texas, it doesn't matter how many people are in the state. Now we're kind of more on equal footings. So the House of Representatives, wow, we had so much more than Rhode Island. But now here in the Senate, now we're going to have to treat each other equally, okay? They have a smaller body. There's 2 per state. We only have 50 states, so that means that we have 100 in total. They are going to serve a 6-year term. The reason why they're serving a 6-year term is because when you want law to happen, it's going to take a long time to do it, okay? So these people are supposed to provide the stability. The representatives are bringing the they're the ones that are following the changes. Okay. Every little nuance of change, they're following it. So if I decide, if I'm thinking this way, they have to like constantly be checking in with us. The senators, they kind of have a little bit more leeway. Okay. The longer that you are in Congress, the better chance that you have of pushing the law that you want to pass through. And so they're going to be the ones who are providing the stability. They're the ones who are going to be there long enough. And so they're going to have a better chance of pushing a law through. There's so many more kind of problems that go with that. But in theory, they should be able to, make some headway since they're there longer. The older membership that you have, the more prestigious you become. These people are going to confirm Supreme Court nominees. This is a super important deal. We just had President Trump just nominated a Supreme Court justice, and the Senate, they were able to push through and approve that confirmation. And now within a few days of election, like they were able to push it through. This is like huge. This is huge. And they're also going to decide on impeachment. So if a president does something wrong, the House of Representatives could press charges, but then it's the Senate who is going to decide whether or not the president needs to be impeached. If Cornyn, who is this guy, who has been a senator since 2002 for Texas, if he was on this election ballot, what year will be the next time that he needs to run for re-election? Ted Cruz is probably a name that you're familiar with. He ran for president alongside Donald Trump, but in the Republican Party, he lost to him. And then Donald Trump became the Republican candidate. So Ted Cruz might be a name that you are somewhat familiar with. And yes, notice how they are both Republicans. Okay. Texas is a very Republican state. So be interesting to see if that continues with this election or not. So it's always fun to kind of see, how people vote and how they're being influenced. And I like seeing, observing how people are doing things. All right. Judicial branch, the role of the Supreme Court. Interpret the Constitution. They are going to uphold regulatory laws. They are going to protect civil liberties. So once a person is taken to court, the judge is the one who kind of influences that. A president nominates a Supreme Justice for life. Okay. Those Supreme Court justices, they are there for life. Provide 2 reasons why a Supreme Justice might be effective and honorable if appointed for life instead of having to be reelected every few years like the representatives. The fact that a judge has to be reelected, is that going to change the way that they might decide on a court case? Okay. Is that something that should happen? Should, judges always have to answer back to the people, or should they kind of be separated so that they're sure and they could be as true as they can be? I don't know. That's you're going to tell me what your thoughts are right there. Let's continue on to the next one. Separation of powers. I feel like this is something that you've heard since you were a tiny, tiny little kiddo in elementary. We have these 3 branches. None is more powerful than the other, and they all have to work together. Here is a really, really bad attempt of talking about this, and maybe this will make sense. Okay, so we have Judge Lina Hidalgo, who was, she's Democratic, and she is a judge, and she was the one who said, hey, we need to wear masks. Our governor, Greg Abbott, who is Republican, is going to, at first said, we don't need to wear masks, you should just do that. And then eventually it turns out that we do need to wear masks. And so he kind of, I guess maybe he had more research that was provided to him, and he, was on board with wearing the mask. And then finally he decided, I don't even know why I'm talking about this. They were not on the same page. Hidalgo wanted for schools to be virtual for a longer period of time. And Greg Abbott was like, no, we got to get, businesses running. We have to continue living, because if we don't, then our economy is going to go to kaput. And so these two, like, she's a judge and he's the executive at the state level. Like, they had to work together to kind of figure out what was going to happen. And I know, like, teachers and students and a lot of people were like, wait, are we wearing masks? Are we not wearing masks? I don't know what's going on. And so these two, you know, from different, this is an example of how the judicial judges and our executive, the governor, kind of had to work together to kind of figure out, you know, what's going on and what did us normal people have to do. The legislator, I don't know. I tried researching this last night to see if I don't think we actually have a law yet about masks. I don't think we're going to, just because the pandemic is, you know, by the time they make a law, the pandemic might be already mostly over. But the executive person, Greg Abbott, he was able to like send an executive order saying that people had to wear masks, which kind of works for a law, but only for a little bit of time. So they all work together, and we just had those two work together. And just thinking about it really makes my mind tired, because I don't know what was going on that they couldn't work together. It was really hard. So the idea is, you know, who has the most power? Well, both of them were able to check on each other, because when Hidalgo at one point said you have to wear masks, and then Greg Abbott was like, no, you don't. And then people were like, okay, are we supposed to? Do we not? Like, so we have this, but it's not being enforced. Like, have you, like, at the beginning, did you ever see people going into stores and it wasn't enforced for them to wear masks? And then finally, both of them started working together, and now it is being enforced. So the idea of who has the most power, you know, this kind of goes all different directions, because they all have to kind of relate back with each other. They all kind of have to work with each other. If I were to, if it was a law for us to wear masks, but the policemen, you know, weren't arresting anybody, then is it really an important law? So, you know, just kind of talking about who has the power. If the police people are arresting people for not wearing masks, but then we have a judge who's like, it's okay, it's fine, and then lets them go, like, are the policemen going to continue arresting that? No, they're probably not, because if the judges aren't holding up their end, then what's the point of the policemen arresting them? So they all kind of have to interlock and work together. I hope this made sense. I hope you got it. Please answer. Just make sure you answer all of your answers here. And we will definitely touch base on this again on Wednesday. Have a good day. Sorry this was so stinking long. We're not even going to. This just is another example of how they all kind of work together.